I never thought I'd be sitting in my car during my lunch break, actually timing how long it takes me to walk to the restroom and back. But here I was, stopwatch app open on my phone, because apparently my bathroom habits had become a workplace spectacle. The email from HR that morning had been professionally worded but humiliating. Recent reports indicate concerns about extended absences from your workstation. Please schedule a meeting to discuss attendance expectations. My hands were shaking as I read it for the third time. Extended absences? I'd been at Meridian Insurance for 8 years with a spotless record, and now suddenly I was being treated like some kind of delinquent employee who couldn't manage basic workplace responsibilities. Before I reveal what really happened, please hit that subscribe button and like. I love hearing from viewers. What's your city? My name is Claire Jordan, I'm 46 years old, and I thought I understood office politics pretty well by now. But nothing had prepared me for this level of pettiness. The worst part was knowing exactly who was behind it. Denise Hoffman, my cubicle neighbor, who'd been hired 6 months ago as a claims processor. From day one, she'd made it clear she thought the office ran too casually, always making little comments about people's work habits and suggesting improvements to our supervisor. I'd noticed her glancing at her watch whenever I got up from my desk, but I'd dismissed it as coincidence. Now I realized she'd been building a case against me, documenting every bathroom break, every trip to the water cooler, every moment I wasn't glued to my chair processing insurance claims. The drive home felt endless as I rehearsed how to explain this to my family. How do you tell the people you love that you're being investigated for spending too much time in the bathroom? The whole thing felt so absurd and degrading that I almost couldn't believe it was real. When I walked through our front door, the familiar smell of dinner cooking should have been comforting, but my stomach was twisted in knots. My husband Michael was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove with that focused concentration he brought to everything. After 22 years of marriage, I could read his moods in the set of his shoulders, and tonight he looked relaxed, maybe even pleased about something. It made what I had to tell him feel even worse. "Hey, beautiful," he said without turning around. "How was your day?" The question hung in the air like a trap. How was my day? Well, Michael, I spent my lunch break timing my own bathroom visits because my coworker thinks I'm a slacker who can't be trusted to manage my basic bodily functions professionally. Complicated, I managed, setting my purse down with more force than necessary. "We need to talk." That got his attention. Michael turned around, wooden spoon still in hand, and I could see him taking in my expression. His easy smile faded into concern, and he reached over to turn down the heat under whatever he was cooking. "What's wrong?" he asked, and the gentleness in his voice almost broke me. "You look like someone died." "Worse," I said, trying for a laugh that came out more like a croak. "Someone's trying to kill my career over bathroom breaks." I watched his face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and then anger as I explained the email, the sudden scrutiny, and my growing suspicion that Denise had been documenting my every move. Michael listened without interrupting, but I could see his jaw getting tighter with every detail. "This is harassment," he said finally. "You can't let them treat you like this, Claire. 8 years of perfect performance reviews, and they're going to question your work ethic because some new person has issues with normal human behavior?" His indignation was comforting, but it didn't solve my problem. I still had to face that HR meeting, still had to figure out how to defend myself against accusations that felt too ridiculous to take seriously, but were apparently being taken very seriously indeed. "I don't even know where to start," I admitted. "Do I confront Denise directly? Do I go to our supervisor? Do I just keep my head down and hope it blows over?" You document everything, Michael said firmly. If she's playing games with timers and reports, you play the same game better. And you talk to someone you trust at work, get another perspective on what's really going on here. That made me think of Janet Rodriguez, my friend from the accounting department, who'd been at Meridian even longer than I had. Janet had a way of knowing office gossip before it became official news, and more importantly, she'd never sugarcoat the truth. If anyone could help me understand what I was really dealing with, it would be her. But even as I started planning my next moves, the deeper worry gnawed at me. This wasn't just about bathroom breaks or even about Denise's weird power play. This was about how quickly your sense of security could evaporate, how a place where you'd felt comfortable and valued could suddenly become hostile territory. I'd walked into work that morning thinking about quarterly reports and client calls, normal work stuff. Now I was walking around my own home wondering if my career was about to implode over something as basic as answering nature's call. The dinner Michael had been cooking smelled amazing, but I couldn't imagine eating anything. My appetite had disappeared somewhere between reading that HR email and realizing that my daily routines were being monitored and judged by someone who barely knew me. The trap I'd missed finally sprang shut. The next morning, I woke up with that familiar dread sitting heavy in my chest. Michael had already left for work, but he'd left a note on the coffee maker. "You've got this. Call Janet today." The small gesture made me smile despite everything. I got to the office early, hoping to avoid Denise entirely and maybe get a chance to think through my approach. But as I settled at my desk with my coffee, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There was a small notebook on Denise's desk, positioned at an angle where she could see my cubicle clearly. The page was open, and even from my distance, I could make out what looked like a timeline with timestamps written in neat columns. My hands started shaking as I pretended to check my email. Was she really keeping a written log of my movements? The audacity of it was breathtaking, but more than that, it was the methodical nature of it that scared me. This wasn't just casual nosiness or a personality conflict. This was deliberate documentation, like she was building a case. I forced myself to act normal, but every time I got up for water or walked to the printer, I could feel her eyes on me. Worse, I was now hyper-aware of every single thing I did. Going to the bathroom became an exercise in anxiety. Should I walk normally or quickly? Should I take my phone or leave it? How long was too long? By lunchtime, I was a nervous wreck. I practically ran to the elevator to meet Janet in the cafeteria, desperate for some perspective from someone who understood how this place really worked. Janet took one look at me and frowned. "You look terrible." "What's going on?" I spilled everything over salads we barely touched. Janet listened with growing alarm, occasionally shaking her head or muttering under her breath. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Claire, I've been here 12 years, and I've seen some petty office politics, but this is something else entirely." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "The thing is, I've noticed Denise asking weird questions about people. Last week she asked me how often I thought people should take breaks and whether I'd noticed anyone being away from their desk excessively. I thought she was just trying to make conversation, but now..." My stomach dropped. "She's doing this to other people too?" "I think she might be, but here's what really bothers me. She's only been here 6 weeks. Why is someone that new so focused on monitoring established employees? It's like she came in with an agenda." The rest of the afternoon crawled by. Every email notification made me jump, wondering if it was another summons from HR. Denise left for what I assumed was a bathroom break, and I found myself actually noting the time on my computer screen before I caught myself. Was I really going to start timing her bathroom breaks too? What was this place turning me into? At 5:30, I was packing up to leave when my computer chimed with a new email. My heart sank as I saw it was from Denise, sent not just to me, but copied to our supervisor, Linda Morrison. Claire, I noticed you were away from your desk for approximately 47 minutes today across multiple breaks. This seems excessive for normal work productivity. I've documented the times for your reference. 9:23, 9:31 a.m., 10:45, 10:52 a.m., 12 or 12:58 p.m., 2:15, 2:23 p.m., 3:44, 3:51 p.m., and 4:32, 4:38 p.m. Perhaps we should discuss time management strategies that better align with company expectations. I stared at the screen in disbelief. She had literally timed every single time I left my desk, including my lunch break. The lunch break that everyone took, that was standard, that she had taken herself for nearly an hour. But what made it worse was the tone. Professional enough that she couldn't be accused of harassment, but loaded with implications about my work ethic and professionalism. And copying Linda made it official. This was now part of my work record. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "How did today go? Thinking about you." I couldn't even figure out how to respond. How did you explain that someone was turning your basic human needs into a performance evaluation? That your 8 years of dedication were being undermined by someone with a stopwatch and a clipboard? I was still staring at my phone when another email appeared. This one was from Linda Morrison, asking me to come to her office first thing tomorrow morning. The walls felt like they were closing in. This wasn't just about bathroom breaks anymore. This was about my reputation, my career, and my sanity. And I was starting to realize that Denise's campaign against me was just getting started. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my laptop screen, reading Denise's email for the 10th time. The numbers seemed to mock me. 47 minutes total. For an entire 8-hour workday, I had been away from my desk for less than an hour, including lunch, and somehow that was excessive. My phone rang, and I saw it was my sister Sarah. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, and I could hear her kids playing in the background. "Honestly, it got worse." I told her about the email, about Linda wanting to see me tomorrow morning, about feeling like I was being set up for something bigger than bathroom break monitoring. "Wait, she timed your lunch break too? Your actual lunch break?" 58 minutes. I had a sandwich at my desk and made a few personal calls. You know, like a normal human being. Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Claire, this is starting to feel really calculated, like she's building a case against you for something." The thought had been nagging at me all evening. But why? I don't even know her. We barely interact except for basic work stuff. Maybe that's not the point. Maybe you're just in her way somehow. After we hung up, I tried to focus on preparing for tomorrow's meeting with Linda. I pulled up my work files, my recent projects, anything that could demonstrate my value to the company. 8 years of performance reviews, all positive. Completed projects, satisfied clients, 0 disciplinary actions. But somehow, I felt like I was the one who needed to prove something. The next morning, I arrived at the office 30 minutes early. Linda's door was already open, and she waved me in as soon as she saw me. "Claire, thanks for coming in. Please sit down." Linda had always been straightforward, which I appreciated, but her expression was unreadable this morning. "I wanted to talk about the concerns that have been brought to my attention regarding your time management." "Linda, I've been with this company for 8 years. My work has always been completed on time and exceeded expectations. I'm not sure why my bathroom breaks are suddenly under scrutiny." "I understand this must feel frustrating," Linda said, leaning back in her chair. "But when new team members raise concerns about productivity standards, I have to address them. It's about consistency across the department. New team members who have been here 6 weeks? Linda, Denise is timing me with a stopwatch. She's documenting every time I get up from my desk, including when I go to the printer or grab coffee. This isn't about productivity standards. Linda's expression shifted slightly. You're saying she's actually timing you? Yesterday, she sent me an email with exact timestamps of every break I took down to the minute. She's doing the same thing to Marcus in accounting. This isn't normal workplace behavior. I'll need to look into this more thoroughly, Linda said after a pause. In the meantime, I'd suggest being extra mindful of time away from your desk, just to avoid any appearance of issues. I left Linda's office feeling deflated. Even though she seemed to recognize something was off about Denise's behavior, I was still the one being asked to modify my actions. Around 10 that morning, Marcus appeared at my desk. How did your meeting go? About as well as expected. Linda says she'll look into it, but I'm supposed to be extra careful about my desk time in the meantime. Marcus glanced around, then lowered his voice. Claire, I think I figured out what Denise is really doing. I was in the break room early this morning, and I overheard her on a phone call. She was talking about building documentation and establishing patterns of behavior. This isn't random monitoring. She's trying to build cases against people. My stomach dropped. Cases for what? I don't know yet, but I think we need to start protecting ourselves. Document everything. Every interaction, every email, every time she approaches you, and maybe we should find out if there are others. The rest of the morning passed in a haze of hyper-awareness. Every time I stood up, every bathroom break, every trip to the printer felt staged and watched. Around 11:30, I realized I had been holding off on going to the bathroom for over an hour because I was afraid of the scrutiny. That's when it hit me. Denise wasn't just monitoring my productivity. She was successfully controlling my behavior, making me afraid to take care of basic human needs in my own workplace. And if she was doing this to multiple people, she was systematically creating a hostile environment while appearing to be the model employee. I was still processing this realization when my computer chimed with another email from Denise. This time, she wasn't just documenting my breaks. She was questioning the validity of a client call I had taken, suggesting that personal calls during work hours violated company policy. The problem was, it hadn't been a personal call. It was a legitimate work call with a client, but I realized that Denise had no way of knowing that from her desk. She was just assuming and reporting based on incomplete information. That's when I understood exactly how dangerous this situation had become. Denise wasn't just building a case based on facts. She was building a case based on assumptions, implications, and carefully crafted documentation that painted me as an unproductive employee. And tomorrow, I realized with growing dread, she would probably have even more documentation to share with Linda. I stared at the email for a long moment, my hands actually shaking. The client call she was referencing had been a 30-minute discussion about revising a contract timeline. I had my notes right there in my desk drawer to prove it, but the fact that I even had to think about defending a legitimate work conversation made me realize how twisted this whole situation had become. I forwarded the email to Marcus immediately, then walked over to his desk. We need to talk. Now. Marcus read the email while I stood there, and I watched his expression grow darker. This is harassment, Claire. She's not monitoring productivity anymore. She's actively trying to get you fired. But how do I prove that? To anyone else, it looks like she's just being thorough about company policies. We document everything, starting right now, and we need to find out if she's doing this to others. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm going to start keeping a log of every time I see her watching you, timing you, or sending these emails. You do the same. When I got home that evening, I was emotionally drained. My sister Sarah took one look at my face when I walked through the door and immediately set down the laundry she was folding. "What happened today?" I collapsed onto the couch next to her and explained about the email, about Marcus's theory that Denise was building cases against multiple people, about how I was now afraid to take bathroom breaks at my own job. "This woman is sick," Sarah said flatly, "and what's worse is that she's succeeding." "Look at you, Claire. You're a nervous wreck over going to the bathroom. That's not normal workplace stress." "But what can I do? Linda already thinks I'm the problem employee who needs to be more careful." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then got up and grabbed her laptop. "Show me these emails, all of them." For the next hour, we went through every interaction I'd had with Denise over the past month. Sarah, who worked in human resources at her company, started making notes as we reviewed everything. "Claire, look at the pattern here. She's not documenting your actual performance or work quality. Every single complaint is about your physical presence at your desk. That's not performance management, that's surveillance. Linda said she'd look into it, but I get the feeling she thinks I'm overreacting. Maybe Linda needs to see this differently." Sarah pulled up a document on her laptop. "Help me create a timeline of every incident. We're going to present this like the systematic harassment it actually is." The next morning, I arrived at work to find another email from Denise waiting for me. This one questioned why I had been away from my desk for 12 minutes the previous afternoon. I remembered the time exactly because I had been in Linda's office for our meeting about Denise's complaints. The irony was so absurd I almost laughed. She was now documenting and questioning the time I spent in a meeting about her documenting and questioning my time away from my desk. Marcus appeared at my cubicle within minutes. "Please tell me you saw the latest email." "She's complaining about the time I spent in Linda's office yesterday. The meeting that happened because of her previous complaints." "This is it, Claire. This is the evidence we need that shows she's not acting in good faith. No reasonable person would document a meeting with your supervisor as suspicious behavior." I forwarded the email to my personal account so Sarah could add it to our timeline, then looked at Marcus. "I think it's time to go back to Linda. But this time, I want to present this as a pattern of harassment, not just a coworker conflict." Marcus nodded. "And I want to come with you. I've been documenting everything I've witnessed, and I think Linda needs to hear from someone else that this behavior is affecting the whole team." As I was preparing to request another meeting with Linda, my computer chimed again. Another email from Denise. This time, she was asking me to explain why I had been having lengthy conversations with Marcus instead of working. She was now monitoring and questioning my conversations with my coworkers. The scope of her surveillance was expanding, and I realized with a chill that Marcus was probably going to become her next target. I stared at Denise's latest email, my hands actually shaking. She was now monitoring my conversations with Marcus, questioning why we had been talking instead of working. The surveillance had expanded beyond just my bathroom breaks to include my interactions with coworkers. "Marcus," I called softly across our cubicles. "Can you come look at this?" He rolled his chair over and read over my shoulder. His face darkened as he took in the content. "She's lost her mind, Claire. This isn't normal workplace behavior anymore. This is obsessive." "I'm scared she's going to start targeting you now, too," I whispered. "Maybe you shouldn't get involved in the meeting with Linda. I don't want you to become her next victim." "Absolutely not. I'm not letting you face this alone, and I'm not going to be intimidated by someone who clearly has boundary issues." Marcus straightened in his chair. "Besides, Linda needs to hear from someone else that this is affecting team morale." I printed out all of Denise's emails and organized them chronologically. Seeing them laid out like that made the pattern even more disturbing. What had started as complaints about bathroom breaks had evolved into detailed surveillance of my every movement, conversation, and moment away from my desk. When I got home that evening, Sarah was already at my kitchen table with her laptop open and several pages of notes spread out in front of her. "I've been thinking about this all day," she said before I even sat down. "We need to reframe how you present this to Linda. Stop calling it a personality conflict or coworker issue. This is workplace harassment with a clear pattern of escalation." I showed her the latest email about my conversation with Marcus. Sarah's expression grew serious as she read it. "Claire, look at the timeline we created yesterday. Day 1, she's timing your bathroom breaks. Day 5, she's questioning your lunch timing. Day 12, she's documenting your sick day. Day 15, she's questioning time spent in meetings with your supervisor. Now she's monitoring your conversations with coworkers. Do you see the escalation pattern?" I did see it, and it made my stomach turn. "It's getting worse, isn't it?" "Much worse. And the fact that she questioned your meeting with Linda shows she has no respect for normal workplace hierarchy or boundaries. That's actually the most concerning email in the entire chain." Sarah pulled up a new document. "We're going to write out a formal complaint, not a request for mediation. You're going to document that you feel this constitutes harassment, that it's creating a hostile work environment, and that you're concerned about retaliation against coworkers who support you. What if Linda doesn't take it seriously? What if she thinks I'm being dramatic? Then at least you'll have documentation that you reported a pattern of harassment and requested intervention. That protects you if this gets worse or if you need to escalate above Linda." We spent the next 2 hours crafting a formal complaint letter. Sarah helped me use language that was professional but firm, clearly outlining each incident and explaining how Denise's behavior was affecting my ability to work effectively. "The key thing," Sarah explained as we reviewed the final draft, "is that you're not asking Linda to make Denise like you or to resolve a personality conflict. You're asking her to address behavior that violates workplace harassment policies." The next morning, I requested a meeting with Linda for that afternoon. When I arrived at her office, Marcus was already there waiting, just as we had planned. Linda looked surprised to see both of us. "I wasn't expecting Marcus to join us. I asked him to come because Denise's behavior is starting to affect other team members, and I think you should hear that directly from him," I said, settling into my chair. I handed Linda the formal complaint letter and the chronologically organized emails. "I need to report what I believe constitutes workplace harassment. This isn't a personality conflict anymore." Linda's eyebrows rose as she began reading through the materials. The room was quiet except for the sound of pages turning. Marcus and I exchanged glances as we watched her expression change from mild concern to genuine alarm. "She questioned your meeting with me?" Linda asked, looking up from the papers. "Yesterday. She wanted to know why I was away from my desk for 12 minutes on Tuesday afternoon." I checked my calendar, and that was exactly the duration of our meeting about her previous complaints. Marcus leaned forward. "Linda, I need you to know that Claire isn't the only one being affected by this. Denise sent her an email yesterday, questioning why she and I were having a conversation. I'm concerned that speaking up in this meeting might make me her next target." Linda set down the papers and looked directly at both of us. "I owe you both an apology. I clearly underestimated the severity of the situation. This level of surveillance and documentation isn't normal workplace behavior." "What happens next?" I asked. Linda was quiet for a long moment, then picked up her phone. "I need to involve HR immediately. This kind of pattern requires formal intervention, not informal mediation." As Linda dialed the HR extension, I felt both relief and a new kind of anxiety. This was about to become much bigger than a simple coworker conflict. and I had no idea what that would mean for my daily work life. 20 minutes later, I found myself sitting in the HR conference room with Linda and Janet Reeves, the HR director. The fluorescent lights felt harsh against my already frayed nerves, and I kept fidgeting with the strap of my purse. "Claire, I've reviewed the materials Linda shared with me," Janet said, her voice professional but warm. "I want you to know that we take these allegations very seriously." "Can you walk me through what's been happening in your own words?" I took a deep breath and started from the beginning, explaining how the bathroom timing had escalated into constant surveillance. Janet took notes while I spoke, occasionally asking for clarification. "You mentioned that Denise questioned your meeting with Linda. Can you tell me exactly what she said?" "She asked why I was away from my desk for 12 minutes on Tuesday afternoon. When I told her it was a private meeting, she said that seemed like a long time for something private and that she hoped I wasn't developing a pattern of extended absences." Janet and Linda exchanged glances. "That's concerning," Janet said, "especially since she had no way of knowing the nature of that meeting unless she was actively monitoring your movements." Linda leaned forward. "Janet, there's something else. Marcus mentioned that Denise is now questioning his interactions with Claire as well. I'm worried this behavior is expanding. We need to document everything thoroughly before we take action," Janet said. "Claire, I'm going to need you to keep a detailed log of any further incidents: date, time, location, witnesses, if any, and exact words used. Can you do that?" I nodded, though the thought of having to continue enduring Denise's behavior while documenting it made my stomach turn. "What kind of action are you considering?" "That depends on what we uncover during our investigation," Janet replied carefully. "We'll need to interview Denise and potentially other team members. This process might take a week or two to complete properly." My heart sank. "So, I just have to keep working with her like nothing's happening?" Linda spoke up quickly. "Absolutely not. We're implementing immediate interim measures. I'm going to have a conversation with Denise today about appropriate workplace boundaries. I won't mention the formal complaint, but I'll make it clear that monitoring coworkers' activities isn't part of her job responsibilities." "What if that makes her more suspicious?" I asked. "She already thinks I'm conspiring against her." Janet closed her notebook and looked directly at me. "Claire, I need you to understand something. Denise's behavior as you've described it isn't normal workplace conduct. Even if she becomes suspicious, that doesn't give her the right to escalate her surveillance or create a hostile work environment." After the meeting, I walked back to my desk feeling emotionally drained. The afternoon stretched ahead of me, and I knew I'd be hyper-aware of every move Denise made. As I sat down, I noticed she was already at her workstation, typing intently. She looked up as I settled into my chair. "Long meeting?" she said casually. "Yes, it was," I replied, keeping my voice neutral while my pulse quickened. "Everything okay? You look stressed." The concern in her voice sounded genuine, which somehow made it worse. "Just work stuff." "Nothing major." Denise nodded and returned to her computer, but I could feel her glancing in my direction more frequently than usual. Every time I got up to use the printer or get water, I was conscious of her presence in a way that made my skin crawl. Around 4 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How did it go? Coffee tomorrow morning before work?" I glanced over at Denise before responding. She was on a phone call, but I noticed her eyes tracking my movement as I picked up my phone. The realization that she was watching me read a text message sent a chill down my spine. An hour later, as I was preparing to leave for the day, Denise approached my desk with a stack of papers. "Claire, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I want you to know that I'm only trying to help. Sometimes, when we're going through personal issues, it can affect our work performance without us realizing it. I stared at her, wondering if Linda had already spoken to her about boundaries. I'm not sure what you mean. Well, you've seemed distracted lately. The frequent breaks, the private meetings, the texting during work hours. I just want you to know that if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. The way she said it, with such apparent sincerity, made me question my own perception of events for a moment. But then I remembered Janet's words about normal workplace conduct, and I realized that even this conversation was another form of monitoring disguised as concern. I appreciate that, Denise, but I'm doing fine, I said, gathering my things quickly. As I headed toward the elevator, I heard her call after me. Claire, wait, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you about. I turned back reluctantly, every instinct telling me to keep walking to the elevator. But walking away would only give Denise more ammunition about my supposed attitude problems. What is it, Denise? She stepped closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. I noticed you've been having a lot of meetings with Linda lately. More than usual. And Janet called you in today too. Is there something going on with the department that I should know about? The question hit me like a physical blow. She wasn't just monitoring my bathroom breaks anymore. She was tracking my meetings, probably trying to piece together whether I had reported her behavior. The realization that she was this invested in monitoring every aspect of my workday made my mouth go dry. Just regular check-ins, I managed to say, hoping my voice sounded steadier than I felt. Denise nodded slowly, but her eyes remained fixed on my face, as if she was analyzing every micro-expression. Of course, I just want to make sure I'm not missing any important updates that might affect our team's productivity. There it was again, that word, productivity. Always framed around the good of the team, the company, efficiency. Never acknowledgement that what she was doing was invasive and wrong. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. The 40-minute drive home gave me too much time to think about how Denise had positioned herself at the center of a web where she monitored not just my bathroom breaks, but my meetings, my phone usage, and probably everything else I did during the day. When I got home, I found myself hesitating before using my own bathroom, which made me angry at myself. She was affecting my behavior, even in my private space. My phone rang while I was making dinner. Marcus. How bad was it? He asked without preamble. Worse than I expected. She knows I met with Janet today. She's tracking my meetings now, Marcus. This isn't just about bathroom breaks anymore. Jesus, Claire. What did Janet say about that? I filled him in on Janet's response and Linda's promise to address it, then told him about the conversation at the end of the day. She actually asked you about your meetings? That's completely inappropriate. But she did it in that way she has, where she sounds concerned about being left out of important team information. If anyone overheard, it would sound reasonable. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Claire, I think you need to document everything. Every interaction, every question, every comment about your bathroom breaks, your meetings, all of it. Start writing it down with dates and times. I should have been doing that from the beginning. You couldn't have known it would escalate like this, but now that it has, you need a record, especially if she's going to start questioning why you're meeting with management. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and tried to reconstruct the timeline of Denise's behavior. When had the comments about my bathroom breaks started? When had she begun the timing? When had she first mentioned productivity to Linda? The more I wrote, the clearer the pattern became. It had started small, almost 3 months ago, with casual observations about how often people left their desks. Then it had gradually focused more specifically on me. The timing aspect had begun about 6 weeks ago, though I hadn't realized it at the time. Looking at it laid out chronologically, I could see how calculated it had been. The escalation had been gradual enough that each individual incident seemed minor, but together, they painted a picture of sustained harassment. The next morning, I arrived at work 15 minutes early, hoping to settle in before Denise got there. But she was already at her desk, coffee in hand, looking like she'd been there for a while. "Morning, Claire. You're here early today." Even that simple observation felt loaded now. Was she going to start tracking my arrival times too? "Morning, Denise." I tried to focus on my work, but I was hyper-aware of her presence. When I got up to get coffee at 9:30, I felt her eyes following me. When I went to the bathroom at 11, I found myself wondering if she was timing it. Around noon, Linda appeared at my desk. "Claire, could I see you for a few minutes?" As we walked toward her office, I noticed Denise watching us leave. The expression on her face was unreadable, but there was an intensity to her attention that made my skin crawl. "I spoke with Denise yesterday afternoon," Linda said once we were in her office with the door closed. I explained that monitoring coworkers' bathroom breaks isn't appropriate and that any concerns about productivity should come through me. "How did she respond?" Linda's expression was troubled. She was very apologetic. Said she hadn't realized how her concern for team efficiency might be perceived. She assured me it wouldn't happen again. I felt a sinking sensation in my stomach. She made it sound like a misunderstanding. That's exactly what she did. And Claire, I have to be honest with you. When someone presents their behavior as well-intentioned concern that was simply misunderstood, it makes it very difficult to address formally. So, what happens now? I've documented our conversation and her response. If there are any further incidents, we'll have a record of this discussion. But unless her behavior continues... Linda didn't need to finish the sentence. Unless Denise was stupid enough to keep obviously timing my bathroom breaks after being told to stop, there wasn't much Linda could do. I walked back to my desk, feeling defeated. Denise looked up as I approached, and for just a moment, I could have sworn I saw satisfaction in her eyes before her expression shifted back to professional neutrality. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice full of apparent concern. But there was something else there too. Something that made me realize this conversation with Linda hadn't ended anything. It had just taught Denise to be more careful. Over the next week, I discovered just how right I'd been about Denise learning to be more careful. She stopped the obvious timing behavior, but something far more insidious took its place. It started with small things. When I returned from lunch 5 minutes late because the elevator had been slow, I found a printout of our company's attendance policy on my keyboard. No note, no explanation, just the policy highlighted in yellow at the section about punctuality expectations. "Oh, that must have gotten mixed up with your papers," Denise said when I glanced her way, not looking up from her computer. "I was reviewing policies for a project." 2 days later, I came back from a bathroom break to find she'd answered my phone and taken a detailed message, complete with timestamps noting exactly when the call came in and when I returned. She handed me the message slip with a smile. "I hope you don't mind. I know you were away from your desk, and it seemed important." The message was for a routine vendor check-in that could have gone to voicemail, but now there was a paper trail showing I'd been away at 10:47 a.m. and returned at 10:53 a.m. The bathroom breaks themselves became an exercise in psychological warfare. She'd developed this habit of glancing at her watch whenever I stood up, just a quick, casual check of the time that could mean anything. When I returned, she'd often be conveniently walking past my desk, greeting me with bright enthusiasm. "Feel better? Back already? Hope everything's okay." Each comment was perfectly innocent in isolation. Together, they created a constant awareness that my every movement was being monitored and cataloged. The worst part was how it was affecting my work. I found myself postponing bathroom breaks until I was genuinely uncomfortable, trying to time them with moments when Denise was away from her desk. I started eating lunch at my computer to avoid any potential attendance issues. The stress was making my stomach problems worse, which only made the whole situation more unbearable. "You look terrible," Sarah said when she called Thursday evening. "Are you sleeping?" I was curled up on my couch, having come home from work with a pounding headache that Tylenol couldn't touch. "Not great. The situation at work is getting worse." "I thought your boss talked to her." "She did. But Denise just got sneakier about it." I told Sarah about the policy printouts, the message taking, the comments and looks. "That's gaslighting," Sarah said immediately. "She's making you question your own perceptions while still controlling your behavior." "I know what she's doing, but I can't prove it. Everything she does has plausible deniability." "What does Linda say?" "I haven't told her yet. What am I supposed to report? That Denise looked at her watch when I got up? That she left a company policy on my desk?" It all sounds so petty when I try to explain it. I could hear Sarah's frustrated sigh through the phone. This is exactly what workplace bullies count on. They push boundaries in ways that are hard to articulate or document. After we hung up, I lay in the dark thinking about how isolated this whole thing was making me feel. At work, I had to pretend everything was normal while being constantly on guard. At home, I was too stressed and exhausted to do anything but worry about the next day. Friday morning brought a new escalation. I arrived to find Denise already organizing papers on her desk, creating neat little piles with the efficiency of someone who'd been there for a while. "Morning, Claire. Busy day ahead?" I was learning to hate the way she always made these observations sound like questions, loaded with implication. Around 10:30, I finally couldn't put off a bathroom break any longer. As I stood up, I saw Denise's peripheral glance at her computer screen, where she kept a small clock widget prominently displayed. When I returned 7 minutes later, there was a new email in my inbox from Denise with the subject line, "Team Scheduling Coordination." The email was addressed to both me and Linda, copying Linda on what appeared to be a helpful suggestion about coordinating our break schedules to ensure adequate desk coverage during busy periods. It was professional, considerate, and completely unnecessary for a two-person team that had never had coverage issues. But buried in the helpful language was a clear message. Denise was creating an official record of concerns about break scheduling, and she was making sure Linda saw it. I stared at the email, feeling my chest tighten with a familiar mixture of anger and helplessness. This was it. This was how she was going to build her case going forward. Not with obvious harassment, but with a paper trail of helpful suggestions and professional concerns that would make me look paranoid if I objected. I was still staring at the screen when my phone rang. Linda's extension. "Claire, could you come see me? And bring Denise with you." My hands were shaking as I walked toward Denise's desk. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright, and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. This was it. Whatever Denise had been building toward, it was happening now. "Linda wants to see us both," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Denise looked up with what appeared to be genuine surprise, but I'd learned not to trust any of her expressions. "Oh? Did she say what about?" "No, just that she wanted to see us both right now." As we walked toward Linda's office, I felt like I was marching toward my own execution. Denise had been so careful, so methodical. Whatever she'd prepared would sound reasonable and professional, while anything I said would make me look defensive and paranoid. I kept running through possible scenarios in my head. Had she documented more than just the bathroom breaks? Had she found other ways to make me look incompetent or problematic? The email about break scheduling had been sent less than 10 minutes ago. Linda couldn't be responding to that alone. Linda's door was open, and she gestured for us to sit in the 2 chairs across from her desk. I noticed she had a file folder open in front of her, but I couldn't see what was inside from this angle. I wanted to talk to you both about some concerns that have come to my attention, Linda began, her tone carefully neutral. Denise, I understand you've had some observations about office efficiency and coverage. My stomach dropped. Here it came. Denise shifted slightly in her chair, and when she spoke, her voice carried just the right note of reluctance. I hope I haven't overstepped. I know I'm still new, and I certainly don't want to cause any problems. It's just that I've noticed some patterns that might be affecting our team's productivity. What kind of patterns? Linda asked. I sat frozen, watching this performance unfold. Denise had probably rehearsed this exact conversation. Well, there seem to be frequent periods where the front desk area isn't covered. I've been tracking it informally, just to understand our workflow better, and I noticed that bathroom breaks sometimes extend beyond what might be typical. Yesterday, for instance, there was a 15-minute period where no one was available for client calls. The lie was so smooth, so confident. Yesterday, I'd been gone for maybe 6 minutes, and Denise had been at her desk the entire time. But how could I prove that without sounding like I'd been watching her just as closely? Linda nodded slowly, making notes. And you felt this was significant enough to bring to my attention? I wasn't sure initially. That's why I sent the email about coordinating schedules. I thought maybe we could resolve it through better communication, but I realized that as the newer team member, I might not have the authority to suggest scheduling changes effectively. I found my voice, though it came out smaller than I'd intended. Linda, I think there might be some misunderstanding about the timeline here. I don't believe I was gone for 15 minutes yesterday. Denise turned to me with an expression of gentle concern. Oh, I wasn't trying to be accusatory, Claire. These things happen. I just thought it was worth discussing so we can work together more effectively. But 15 minutes, I pressed. That seems like a significant overestimate. I could be wrong about the exact timing, Denise conceded gracefully. I wasn't watching the clock that closely. It just felt like a long period when I wasn't sure how to handle client inquiries without backup. Linda was watching this exchange with the focused attention of someone trying to read between the lines. I realized this was my chance to be honest, even if it made me look paranoid. Linda, can I be direct about something? I felt like there's been unusual attention paid to my bathroom breaks lately. I understand the need for desk coverage, but the level of monitoring feels excessive for bathroom trips that are typically under 10 minutes. Denise's eyebrows rose slightly. I'm sorry if I've made you feel monitored, Claire. That absolutely wasn't my intention. I was only trying to understand our office rhythm, so I could be more helpful. Linda leaned back in her chair, and I could see her processing both versions of what was happening. Let me ask you both something. Do you feel like you're communicating effectively as a team? The question hung in the air. I knew my answer, but I also knew how it would sound. I think we're still finding our rhythm, Denise said diplomatically. These kinds of adjustments are normal when someone new joins a team. Linda turned to me. Claire? I took a breath, knowing this moment would define everything that came next. I think we need to have a more honest conversation about expectations and boundaries. Linda closed the file folder and looked at both of us directly. I think that's exactly what we need to do. Блок 10. Не сгенерирован. Требует пересоздания.